Good afternoon, everyone, and may I welcome everyone and members of the viewing and listening public to the 12th meeting of the Public Accounts and Accountability Committee, and where the hearing into the pharmaceutical sector and the state's acquisitions of pharmaceuticals continues this afternoon. As everyone knows, I am the chairman of this committee ex officio. We have with us today officers from the Ministry of Health for us, and can I ask everyone to please introduce themselves, starting with you, Madam Permanent Secretary.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Erica Fortune, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Health.
And the next Permanent Secretary who is here.
Hi. Good afternoon, members. Asif Ali, Permanent Secretary, Office of the Prime Minister.
Thank you. Dr. Richards, can I?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and members. Miriam Abdool-Richards, Principal Medical Officer, Institutions, Ministry of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Doodnath-Siboo, Principal Pharmacist, Ministry of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Dr. Janine St. Bernard, Acting Chief Medical Officer, Ministry of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair. Lawrence Jason, Director of Health Policy, Research and Planning, Ministry of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair, members. Imtiaz Haider Ali, Acting Chief Chemist, Director of Food and Drugs.
Good afternoon, Chair. Kimberly Ramlochan, State Counsel 2.
Thank you all very much. Can I advise that this meeting is being held in public and at the same time is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 on the Parliament's YouTube channel, Parl View. All right. We are a bit depleted of members this afternoon, but thankfully we have a quorum, and I just want to put on the record and welcome Minister Saddam Hussein, who's also a member of this committee, and thank you very much, Minister, for making the effort to attend. Minister Maraj, who was here for the earlier session, was asked to be excused for a short while. He should be back because he has a pressing ministerial engagement for about half hour, 45 minutes, but he's assured me that he will be back. Yes, and can I ask the other members introduce yourselves?
Leroy Batiste, member.
Prakash Prasad, member.
Saddam Hussein, member.
All right, so now that we've gotten those formalities out of the way, can I just say that we intend to start now, and I wish to place on record, public record, again, my acknowledgement of the outstanding and sterling efforts made by the Ministry of Health. Madam PS, please allow me to express my gratitude to you and your staff and appreciation for these outstanding efforts. I know it must have taken a tremendous amount of work for you to collate all that data and to present it in a readily digestible and readable form in the form of this table, which has been very helpful. Can I ask if any member wishes to start the discussion, or shall I? Very well, thank you. Madam PS, can we just simply get some preliminary matters out of the way, and then we'll get into, as they say, the meat of the matter, all right? So the data that you provided in those several boxes has basically been distilled into this table, which comprises pages 1 to 57 inclusive. Am I correct?
That is correct.
And you do have a copy of that table with you, do you?
I do, Chair.
Right. So for the benefit of the members of the public, the table comprises, and it's necessary for us to go through this so that it's easily understandable by members of the listening and viewing public. So the table comprises several columns. Okay, Madam Permanent Secretary?
Yes, Chair.
Its entry number 1 is the number of the entry, and it's 1 to 918 inclusive,
Correct.
right? Then it says an application date, the name of the company, the name of the drugs, the manufacturer, the purpose of the special permission, the comments or remarks, the date it was granted of non-objection, the date of special permission not granted, the name of the chief medical officer granting the permission. Then there's the recommended by, and that becomes critically important having regard to the evidence that we received from the chief medical officer on the last day. And it is something where I would want, it is the signpost at which I would like to begin the journey of discussing the data here, right? The date fully registered and the DAC meeting drug approved for full registration.
Correct, Chair.
Right. So for the avoidance of doubt, the DAC means the Drug Advisory Committee. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
And the Drug Advisory Committee is a statutory body established by the regulations,
Yes,
the
Chair.
subsidiary legislation contained in the Food and Drugs Act. I am correct, am I not?
Yes, Chair, you are.
Right. And in particular, regulation 7 onwards of the third part of the schedule. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
And we'll get to that just now. So, having gotten those preliminaries out of the way, can I read you something, Madam Permanent Secretary? And this is my exchange with Dr. Parasram, so that we put the data in this table into some context. Because, you see, context lends understanding to data. And I think we need to understand what Dr. Parasram was saying to us on the last occasion. So, on the last occasion, and I'm reading from the Hansard, and this is the official record, and this is me saying to Dr. Parasram, so for whatever reason that's the special permission is sought, when that comes to you for your signature, is it a fait accompli, or do you exercise an independent power of discretion? And this is what Dr. Parasram responds. As I said in my statement when I get and I said passive. And Dr. Parasram says, well, the application is passive, meaning I have no control, the officer CMO has no control over who applies one. And once we get the application, we send that to the Director of Food and Drugs and or the principal pharmacist. So, Mr. Siboo, can I ask you to pay some particular attention to this, because it's a matter I wish to take up with you. They do the due diligence to ensure quality, safety, efficacy, and they do the checks of the documents as well, and then they return either an objection or non-objection. Then I asked, how is that objection or non-objection communicated? And the CMO says, Dr. Parasram says, usually by email. When I left office, I remember it being done by email. So once I got the email, the clerks in the office of the CMO would then prepare the document for signature of the CMO. If I get an objection, then of course they do not, which is quite understandable in the circumstances. Now, this exchange occurred, and then Dr. Parasram, further on in the evidence, says, when it comes from, it is simply an email that says that they have no objection. So all I have is the initial letter from the supplier and an email from the respective department saying they have no objection to be granted. Then on the next page, Dr. Parasram says, we rely on the technical departments to look at the respective documents and give an objection or non-objection. That is correct. So maybe I should have read the question that I put to Dr. Parasram. I said, so hang on a second, Dr. Parasram. Sorry for the informality there, right? What you are telling me is that you do not actually see any of this. You simply rely on two departments to tell you whether they object or they do not object. And then Dr. Parasram has resort to the principle of technical reliance. He says we rely on technical departments to look at the respective documents and give an objection or non-objection. That is correct. Then I say, all right, so you do not actually see any documents, and then the letter is presented for your signature. The letter that I see is the letter from the applicant with whatever details that there is therein, generally speaking. And then I said, all right, let's get to what exists in the office of the CMO. There's the application letter, and then there's the permission letter, if we could leave it like that. And Dr. Parasram says, the application letter, and yes, that is correct. And the permission letter here. And then I say, so right, every application has an email accompanying it saying whether they object or they do not object. Dr. Parasram says, yes, that is correct prior to signing off. And then I say, so if we do a granular assessment of this, we will find each application has an objection or no objection accompanying it before your signature is appended to the permission. There is an email that relates directly to that. Dr. Parasram says unequivocally to me, it should have an email that says no objection, yes. And that email, and then I ask, that email emanates from the principal pharmacist and the chemistry, food and drugs, either or, and sometimes from both of them. Now we can go on, but I think everyone gets the gist of the evidence. So there was a clear, unmistakable, unimpeachable, and unequivocal representation to this committee that each special permission has an email attached to it which says either I object or I do not object. Am I to take it, Madam Permanent Secretary, that the table recommended by is meant to capture that discussion?
Yes, Chair, it is meant to.
So let's go to the first page of this table. Out of 17 drugs listed here, perhaps, Mrs. Siboo, you could chime in on this at the appropriate time as well, right? So the table has 17 drugs listed here. Out of those 17, only 3 has a person recommending it. Am I correct?
Chair, can you reference the specific table?
This table.
The summary.
Can I hold it up for you?
Yes,
This one.
yes. Okay,
Am I correct?
correct.
Madam PS?
Yes.
Madam Permanent Secretary, let me make it abundantly clear to the members of the listening and viewing public. You were not the Permanent Secretary at the time. So you are just the repository of the information. What in court Minister Hussain will tell you is a postbox witness, someone who comes to bring the evidence and comment on the documentation, right? So I wish to make it abundantly clear, Madam Permanent Secretary, that at the time, you were not the Permanent Secretary that presided over this. Right? I want to be very fair to you. So out of all of these 17, 3 had a recommendation.
Correct.
Now, at the time, Dr. Parasram was not the CMO for most of these. So what we then discover, I beg your pardon, forgive me, is that some of the drugs, even though they were permitted to be imported by way of special permit, we now realize that some of them were never registered, have not been registered up to today.
Correct.
What is even more alarming to me, and when we get to the statutory provisions, I will show you. So pages 1 to 57 that outlines all of this. And it's the DAC participation, the Drug Advisory Committee, And we'll get to the meaning of that in a short while. There is only one meeting outlined where the Drug Advisory Committee was involved in. Do you agree?
I agree, Chair.
You see, well, that's shocking in two regards. One, all of these drugs that are registered in these 57 pages, and there's some of them, I think you did a breakdown of some of them, Madam Permanent Secretary.
Yes, Chair, we did.
So all of these that were registered, 365 of them were registered eventually.
Yes, Chair, correct.
There is only one instance of the DAC being involved. You agree with me?
Yes, Chair.
Can I address this to Mr. Ali and Mrs. Siboo? The Drug Advisory Committee is a statutory body. You all accept that?
Yes, Chair.
Right. And I don't really want to get into the legislation unless I have to, but you could take it from me that I've read it. The Drug Advisory Committee is set up there as the guardrail to the regulatory process. Am I correct in summarizing the role as that?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair.
And the legislation says that the sole person responsible for registering, giving approval for the registration of pharmaceuticals is the minister. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
The minister acts on the advice of the DAC. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
The minister cannot bypass the DAC. Am I correct?
I do not think so, Chair.
Mrs. Siboo?
I don't think so either, Chair.
So why, if that is the case, we have 365 pharmaceuticals being registered and only one instance of the DAC considering it? How could that possibly have happened? Before you answer, I want to place on record and my gratitude for the attendance of Member Minister Naked. How could that possibly have happened? And I want you all to be very careful, because bearing in mind, quite apart from special permission, which bears the signature of the CMO, the notice of approval as contemplated in this act, and I can find it if anyone thinks that it's not there, but the notice of approval has to be signed by the minister. How could 365 drugs have been registered without the participation of the DAC? Mr. Permanent Secretary Ali, can I invite you to answer that if you can venture an answer?
Thank you, Chair. I can't answer, Chair, because, as I said before, that would have fallen under the purview of the CMO. The issue of special permissions.
This is not special permission, right. Mr. Ali. This is special permission having been granted. Right. We were careful enough to ask whether drugs which came in, perhaps I should not use the word drugs, right? Perhaps I should say pharmaceuticals, give it its correct description, in case anybody thinks otherwise. Pharmaceuticals which were allowed to be imported into this country pursuant to a special permission. The special permission letter has a condition that you must proceed to registration. Am I correct? Is that your recollection of what the letter says? You would have seen many of them in your 10 years Permanent Secretary.
I would have seen none of those shared, those letters don't pass through me. I do recall at the last meeting of the committee that was what was discussed. So based on the last meeting, I would say yes.
Shall I give you a sample? Mrs. Siboo, can you confirm that when a special permission is granted, there is a condition in that permission that no further permission will be granted unless the drug is registered?
Yes, Chair, the bottom of the special permission
Yes.
letter has that captured.
I don't want to
at the
waste
bottom.
time,
Yes.
but it is there in every single one of them. And there is a bundle of the special permission that we have, but I can assure you it's there in each one. So what I want to know is this. I want to drill down into details of this. That is a condition, and there are many permutations to this which we'll get to. That is a condition that is laid down for the grant of the permission. Am I correct, Mrs. Siboo?
According to the special permission letter, Chair, that is what is written at the bottom of the letter.
So then 365 of those pharmaceuticals proceed to be registered. All right, that is the documents coming from the ministry.
Based on the information here, Chair, yes.
Yes. Then we know for a fact that it is only once the Drug Advisory Committee considered that. Okay? Am I correct? This has been confirmed by your permanent secretary. It's all in this table. There is one notation of a meeting. Every other drug, whether it's registered or not registered, except for that one singular occasion, there is no DAC involvement. It's the last column, Mrs. Siboo. You can look at it. You can thumb it through very quickly, but it's the last column. You will see the one single occasion that it appears, and I can tell you which page it is. It's at page 11 of the document. So that, okay, there may be one or two instances, but let's say very few. I will hazard a guess that 99% of these drugs never went to the DAC. Madam PS, by the way, can I ask you to clarify? NA appears quite frequently. What does NA mean in this table?
Not applicable.
Well, not applicable. Well, why wouldn't registration be DAC be inapplicable?
They possibly would have used Reliance. I could ask Mr. MDS to confirm.
Reliance in 2017?
I could ask him to confirm. Mr.
Mr. Haider Ali, when did the concept of Reliance first come to the fore in the ministry?
Reliance came into the fore in 21, I believe.
So why would Reliance be an issue in 2017? Reliance could not possibly have been a reason why. You have NA being interspersed throughout this document.
And NA means not available. Information is not available.
I thought so. It couldn't possibly have meant not applicable, because by statute it must be applicable. So that makes it even worse. So you know what? Every time NA appears in this, it means they're missing documents for something as important as drug registration. So, Mrs. Siboo, how do we explain all these drugs being registered without DAC approval?
Respectfully, Chair, as the principal pharmacist, the unit would be the Drug Inspectorate, and then the Director of Chemistry, Food and Drug would be the focal point for that particular unit, and the Drug Advisory Committee usually operates out of there. I am not and have never been a part of the DAC, so I humbly
So you are
am
unable to say as well.
Correct, sir.
Permanent Secretary Ali, are you able to assist us at all?
Unfortunately not, Chair.
So no one knows how these 365 pharmaceuticals were registered. Mr. Haidar Ali?
Chair, the 365 were products that were, after the special permissions were given, the companies would have submitted those dossiers through the Drug Registration Unit of Chemistry, Food and Drugs, which went on to the DAC to get registered.
So why do we have no DAC participation?
No, we have DAC participation. It's just to find the documents for those afterwards.
So hang on a second.
Some of them, we have the data for it that we find, that we have electronic tracking for it. Most of the data we don't have electronically as yet for past DAC meetings.
Hang on a second. The process is the application is received. It's evaluated, Chemistry, Food and Drugs. The Director of Chemistry, Food and Drugs sits, the Chief Chemist sits on the DAC. Am I correct? Ex
Yes, Chair, most
officio.
instances.
Am I correct? Ex officio, the Director sits on the DAC.
Yes.
Then these matters are considered by the DAC. There's technical evaluation. Everything, all the scientific criteria is considered by the DAC. Then the notice of approval is presented for the minister's signature. Now, no one expects the minister to do this himself, you know. But the minister is expected to sign that notice of approval only in circumstances where the DAC says, go ahead and sign it, go ahead and give it. It would be untenable for the DAC to say, we do not recommend this, but the minister signs it. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
So in the circumstances where a drug is approved for importation into Trinidad and Tobago, that importation can only take place upon the minister issuing a notice of approval.
Correct, Chair.
So how, in the circumstances, does the minister sign that notice of approval if no DAC documentation exists? That's what I'm getting at.
No, Chair. The 365 actually went through DAC. They were drugs that subsequently came to as special permissions, and then sometime further in the future, the drug companies submit the applications to Chemistry, Food and Drugs to get it registered. And it went through DAC as normal.
Yeah. I'm not understanding that, you know. Perhaps it's my fault. I know it's entirely my fault, right? My severe limitations that I'm operating under. I quite understand it's my fault, but I don't quite understand the logic of that. You see, so what are you telling me? That these special permissions were granted by and large for change of manufacturing sites and so on? Is that what you're telling me?
No, special permission has came in for special permission by itself.
All right, but what would have motivated special permission?
The product was not registered.
That's my point. The product was not registered, so you had to get special permission to do so.
Correct, Chair, at that point in time.
Right. So where are the DAC documents which says subsequent to the special permission for the 365 that were eventually registered? There's no trace of DAC documentation or consideration here. That's what I want to know, because it's an important step in the approval process. You see, Mr. Haidar Ali, the minister cannot act in the absence of DAC approval.
No, subsequent to the special permission being approved, that's one aspect of it.
I'm not
The
talking about that.
application
I'm
for
talking
registration is
about
separate.
after the special permission has been granted, after the importation has taken place pursuant to the special permission, subsequent importations and registrations, that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
How come we don't have any documentation concerning the 365 registrations? We can't find any, some are not, it said quite clearly, any not available. And then there's, the column has a complete absence of reference to any DAC meeting. What is this committee reasonably to, what is the reasonable inference this committee is entitled to draw from that?
Chair, after the product has been registered, it goes in a database internally. And we were able to pull from that database if the product was registered after the special permission date was done.
Yeah, I understand all
And
of
I
that,
put that
Mr.
in.
Hyder Ali. What I don't understand is the process of registration subsequent to the importation. That's what I don't understand. Because if it's going to be registered, the DAC is an integral statutory component of that process. How come we don't have any documentation, any note in these tables about the DAC participation? That's what's troubling me. That's what is troubling me, quite frankly. Because you see, the notice of approval as contemplated in the statutory provision, the minister may sign, no drug may be imported into Trinidad and Tobago unless a notice of approval signed by the minister is granted in that regard. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
So on what basis did the minister sign that notice of approval if no DAC involvement? At the ultimate, not the special permission. I think we are cross purposes here. At the ultimate registration, where are those documents?
Well, Chair, we didn't ask for those documents to get pulled.
We did.
Yeah.
We did. We did. The column says, DAC meeting drug approval for full registration. That's what it says. The staff of the parliament is very careful how they draft requisition for documents, right? So don't, I want to be very, very circumspect in what I say to you, Mr. Hyder Ali, because you are venturing to give me the answer. But don't attempt to hastily cobble together a regulatory Potemkin village for me, okay? We were very careful in what we asked for because we understand an integral part, condition of that special permission is full registration. So I want to know when these drugs were fully registered, why we can't find any documents before the DAC or any participation of the DAC. Mr. Naked, I will forgive you for that. Perhaps that was a telling intervention by Member Naked there. You see really trouble I'm having, Mr. Hyder Ali? Because the minister cannot sign that notice of approval without the DAC approval. The statute just doesn't work that way. I know it's a difficult question, but it's a question we should require the answer to. And then let's go on. Then we have a total of 184 unregistered drugs. Am I correct, Madam PS?
That is correct, Chair.
And we have instances where these drugs were repeatedly imported into Trinidad and Tobago. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
Unregistered drugs. Is it not an offense to import into Trinidad and Tobago pharmaceuticals which have not been previously registered?
Chair, in some instances, I asked that question. I was advised that a number of cases were for personal use.
Whether it's for personal use or not, Madam Permanent Secretary, it's actually irrelevant to the law does not give an exemption for personal use.
Yes.
All right, so Mrs. Siboo, I want to ask you about this now. Don't look so forlorn, Mrs. Siboo. I promise the answers and the questions are not that difficult. Do you recall the system of letters of no objection?
Yes, Chair, there is a
Yes,
system.
that is a practice that has now been discontinued by the ministry. Am I correct?
For one particular class of drugs, sir. Yes.
Now, the regulatory concept behind the letter of no objection is a laudable one, right? Never mind the lack of statutory power to do so. I understand the administrative arrangements. So when a shipment of pharmaceuticals comes into the country, customs requires the ministry to say letters of no objection. Am I correct?
For the particular class that it would apply to, yes, Chair.
Yes. And you would only issue a letter of no objection if the drugs are registered.
In most instances, yes, Chair.
Mrs. Siboo, you will not issue a letter of no objection if the
It's-
pharmaceutical is
it's
not
not
registered.
registered.
I think you will agree with me, you would not do that,
Yes.
right?
Yes, sir.
So how are these 184 unregistered pharmaceuticals imported into the country when there was, in the face of that, a system of letters of non-objection? How could that possibly have happened?
So, Chair, as it relates to the 184, respectfully, I would have seen this document this morning to have a chance to go through it. The items that, based on the unregistered that I'm seeing in the column, date fully registered, they are basically what is called third schedule drugs, which will fall under the chemistry, food and drug, that particular part of the legislation. The letter of no objection applies to precursor chemicals, for example, pseudoephedrine, ephedrine, and the class of fluoroquinolones as it relates to internationally being antibiotics, classed as antibiotics, but not yet classed as antibiotics in Trinidad and Tobago, but in order to, so it doesn't, this 184, based on my first review of it, I don't think any of them fall into that category for the letter of no objection.
So why was special permission needed to import them? They still needed to be registered.
Correct, they need to be registered. But because of the need, as would have been explained in previous committee meetings with respect to stockouts, personal,
Okay.
emergency, for
So-
a change in this, sorry.
So that's your explanation for it.
Sorry,
No,
Chair.
no, yes, I accept that.
I'm trying to understand, to try to see
I accept
why.
that. So I'm going to ask you this now. If a drug, a pharmaceutical is imported on a special permission where a specific condition of it is full registration, should there be an instance of where that pharmaceutical is repeatedly imported without being registered?
Chair, there can be instances, and I'm being very honest, there can be instances with respect to the submission of the application for the product to be registered and the need for the product in the country as it relates to, for example, stockouts. I can speak to some antibiotics, which are basically vital and or essential medicines. The time taken for them to get the product registered, the stock that would have been in the country awaiting registration and have been imported via special permission would have been depleted, and therefore, based on the need for us to provide medication for the population, hence the reason a subsequent application would have been submitted for consideration for importation of another shipment.
What's the analysis here? Huh? Pharmaceuticals and then. So, what is Trulicity used for?
I don't recall right now, so if you give me a couple of minutes, I'll be able to get it faced.
So let me tell you why. Trulicity had repeated approvals for special permission between 2018 to 2024. Repeated. What was the need for special permission? Why wasn't it registered? Let's go down. Claricid. That was frequently approved and then eventually registered. Farxiga, multiple annual applications. And we could go on and on and on and on. Panadine, one of the most commonly used painkillers. Repeatedly being the beneficiary of special permission without being registered for many years. I mean, Mrs. Siboo, you must agree with me that from a regulatory perspective, this is untenable. Are you nodding in approval?
Chair, I do agree with you. However, there needs to be an understanding in terms of what is required. So with respect to Panadine, if I may be allowed to explain just a little bit with Panadine. So Panadine, the formulation would have changed from 8 milligrams, 500 milligrams paracetamol to 8 milligrams, 325 milligrams paracetamol. So therein lies the need for it to be re-registered because the initial one was registered. And in the interim, while they were getting the documents from the manufacturer, international manufacturer, to do the registration, Panadine would have been required, given the fact that it was one of the most commonly used pain medicines within that period of time. Then there would have been changes in terms of the authorized distributor. So whereas one distributor would have gotten the permission and the documents, because it's now a different distributor, the application had to be
All right, I'm interested in that. Authorized distributor, when did the distributor change?
Chair, I would probably have to get back, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere between 2022, 2023, if I'm not mistaken. But
So I have
to
my
get
theory
back to
about
you.
that, but I'm not going to say anything about it. I understand Minister Hussain wishes to ask a few questions. I will come back after.
Chairman, I just want to move the conversation away from the special permission with your leave. And yes. I would like to ask Ms. Doodnath-Siboo some questions. Ms. Doodnath-Siboo, you currently serve as the principal pharmacist, yes?
Yes.
Ministry of Health. And you operate as the head of that division, basically?
Inspectorate?
Yes. And under your line, in terms of persons who report to you, would a person of a position of pharmacist to report to you?
Yes, Chair. Yes, sorry.
From the Ministry of Health, sure. Yes. And C40 is a facility that is maintained and operated by NIPDEC.
Correct, sir.
Yes. And there's where, when drugs are procured through NIPDEC, we use that facility for the storage of those pharmaceuticals.
As far as I'm aware, that is a contracted service provider by the ministry, contracted for the provision of procurement, distribution.
Sure.
Yes.
And that's under NIPDEC's control.
That is basically under NIPDEC's control.
Yes.
Sir.
And in NIPDEC C40, you would normally liaise with someone called the warehouse manager there on behalf of the ministry in the ordinary course of business.
The warehouse manager, the medical supplies coordinator, and the head, well, it used to be head farm,
Sure.
multiple persons, yeah,
Sure.
multiple persons.
Can you tell me if there was a person by the name of Chantal Dan, who was a pharmacist too, that was employed at the Ministry of Health?
She was employed at the Ministry of Health.
Do you know her?
Yes, yes, I know her.
And she reported to you?
She would not have, as a pharmacist too, you would report to me as the warehouse manager. You would report to.
No, I didn't reach warehouse manager.
Okay, well.
As pharmacist
yes.
too, yes?
Yes,
Because
she
she's a
would report
pharmacist
to
too,
me.
Ministry of Health.
Yes.
Yes. And Ms. Dan was given leave from the Ministry of Health to serve as a warehouse manager in NIPDEC?
Well, I would think that's HR would have done, but as far as I'm aware, she no longer reported to me as a pharmacist too, and was employed with NIPDEC, yes. Yeah.
Were you part of that interviewing panel that interviewed Ms. Dan for the position of warehouse manager?
Chair, sorry, Minister, I was part of the interviewing panel for the warehouse manager in NIPDEC, which is part of the normal procedure, given the principal pharmacist position, and the fact that I would have communication with all parties at NIPDEC.
You were part of the panel that interviewed Ms. Dan, and she was a successful candidate as warehouse manager.
But I was not the only part of the panel.
But you were part of the panel.
I was part of the panel, yes.
And at that time that you were part of the panel, she was a pharmacist too, Ministry of Health.
I don't remember.
You don't remember that?
I don't remember if she was a pharmacist too at that point in time, but I'll have to double check it for you.
But she was
sir.
given leave by the Ministry of Health for a 1-year period to serve as a warehouse manager.
Well, Mr. I probably have to go back and check the time frame in terms of when it was at that point in time.
Ms. Dan interviewed for this position in the year April, the period April 2023, Ms. Dan interviewed for the position. You were the acting principal pharmacist.
At the time, yes, sir.
And her resume would have indicated that she was a she was a pharmacist too,
Well,
Ministry of Health.
I don't remember right now, sir, but if it is, yes.
And she interviewed so well that you ensured that she became the warehouse manager at NIPDEC.
It was a combination of what are the requirements, but like I said, I was not the only member of the panel. There were other members. My portfolio there would have been what would be the requirements from that perspective.
Did you at all indicate that that as part of the interviewing panel, a member of that panel, that you may have been conflicted because she was reporting under your division?
Sir, I did not. It is my understanding that all members of the panel would have been reviewed and scrutinized by NIPDEC because it would have been a contracted or it would have been an interview undertaken by NIPDEC.
I'm talking about you.
If
None of the other members of the panel were conflicted.
okay,
You were the only person conflicted?
well, I saw it as a technical, sir.
Sure. And Mr. Chair, can I then move on to the PMO? Chair, I just want to ask, in what capacity is the PMO appearing? As a former chairman of NIPDEC or as a PMO institutions?
I think in every capacity that is relevant to the terms of reference of the inquiry.
Sure.
That
Chairman,
is my understanding.
Dr. Richards, Dr. Abdool-Richards, can you indicate whether or not that this one Ms. Dan, you were the chairman of NIPDEC, yes? Yes. And Ms. Dan would have been guilty of punctuality breaches 15 of her 20 months of employment at NIBDEC. Are you aware of that?
Before I answer, Chair and Committee, thank you so much. I must express my gratitude at being able to have been invited here, and I'll try my best to answer truthfully and in the interest of accountability and transparency.
We would expect nothing less.
Yes, I just had to
Madam
say
PM.
that. Yes, Ms. Chantal Dan was employed at NIBDEC. I cannot recall the actual number of punctuality breaches with respect to her, but I believe that that information would be available from NIBDEC.
But were you aware that they were?
I was aware of a challenge around punctuality, yes, because I was a member of the HR committee of the board, and from time to time, the general manager of human resources would bring issues that were beyond her. But I can't say at this point, I'm not privy to the actual number of incidents.
And there were also issues with respect to her absenteeism.
I can't recall. I don't have those contemporaneous notes.
Sure. I just want to go back to Ms. Siboo's, because I just saw something while going through the documents. Ms. Siboo, are you aware that on the resume of Ms. Chantal Dan, that you may have been listed as a reference?
No, sir, I am not aware.
Okay,
I'm
sure.
sorry, I'm not
Mr.
aware.
Chair, we'll probably have to speak in caucus after.
If I would.
Sorry, Dr. Richards. So, Dr. Richards, I also want to get into some of the matters with respect to the relationship between NIBDEC and the Ministry of Health. To be fair to you in your absence, I did ask a series of questions to the now permanent secretary with respect to this position. You were the you are or were the principal medical officer in the Ministry of Health for a certain period between, could you remember the period? I could probably help you with it.
Yes, Honorable Minister, I would have been the principal medical officer in an acting capacity from or about
2018?
2018 up until present.
Yeah. And during this period of time, you were appointed as a director on NIBDEC in or around the 16th of November 2020.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, Minister.
And serving in the Ministry of Health, that's a managerial capacity as a PMO.
And partly clinical, according to the job description.
And your reporting line will obviously be to your permanent secretary.
The Chief Medical Officer.
CMO, permanent secretary, and to the minister.
I don't report directly to the permanent secretary, just to the Chief Medical Officer.
To the Chief Medical
Yes.
Officer. And as part of your functions as a PMO institutions, you would also have oversight over some of the district facilities and so on. Yes?
The hospitals, yes.
The hospitals.
Secondary and tertiary care institutions,
Correct.
yes.
And of course, the procurement of pharmaceuticals is critical to the functioning of those institutions.
Yes, it is.
And as a PMO, you would be aware of some of these matters.
I don't get engaged at all because the principal pharmacist does not have a reporting relationship with my office, and any drug shortages or any sorts of stockouts go through, from my knowledge, the regional pharmacist to the principal pharmacist and her office.
So you're telling this committee that as the PMO institutions who has oversight over facilities, medical facilities that administer pharmaceuticals to the public, that you did not at any point in time would have any knowledge of the drug shortages at those facilities?
It would just be in passing reference. It would not be formalized in any meetings because at the onset of my role at NIBDEC in November 2020, I would have outlined, and the Chief Medical Officer, my boss, would have ensured that there was no cross-relationship, and I would have recused myself from any discussions involving pharmaceuticals. I do not have a reporting relationship, and the principal pharmacist or anyone does not have any sort of reporting relationship to me. And there's a clear line in terms of how the pharmaceutical stockouts or shortages are managed in the RHA. Maybe she can expand on that.
But no, I'll focus on asking you
Yes.
some questions. And as the chairman of NIPDEC, let's go there now.
Yes.
You at all would not know what drugs you're procuring and for who it is being procured?
I would not get into those details. I will say that there was one occasion that I would like to highlight where I was made aware of a situation involving distribution, if I may.
Let me, before you reach there, I
Yes.
want to just further this because I need to develop this point. Then why would a cabinet find it appropriate to appoint someone on a board as essential as the NIPDEC board for the procurement of pharmaceuticals if you have to every time recuse yourself from discussions regarding pharmaceuticals at the ministry level, and now you are responsible not as a director, but as the chairman of the only arm of the state that procures drugs and pharmaceuticals? Don't you see a blurring of the line there?
I can't say how the appointment was made. I'm not privy to that information in terms of the justification from the NIB.
In fact, also, wouldn't you say and confirm to this committee that based on your position as a PMO and as the chairman of NIPDEC, concerns were raised within NIPDEC with regards to conflict of interest?
Yes, they were, and I can provide the dates of when it was raised and the manner in which it was raised.
And it was raised, and subsequently, the board, which is a political appointed board, agreed,
Yes.
would have then asked for an external opinion, correct?
Yes.
And the external opinion sought to suggest that you did not have a conflict of interest.
Yes.
And the opinion was sought from another political appointee, who is Mr. Ravi Nanga. Yes?
I was not part of the selection. I would have just received
But are you aware
Of what?
who gave the opinion?
Yes, I'm aware. We have a copy of it.
And you're aware that at that time he was also the chairman of WASA?
I'm aware he was the chairman of WASA, yes.
A political appointee. Yes? And that legal opinion that he provided happened to be delivered to NIPDEC on the date of the election being the 28th of April 2025. Yes?
Yes.
I have no other questions, Chairman.
Dr. Abdool-Richards, NIPDEC in its role as the procurement agency for the state for pharmaceuticals and then the distributor. Am I correct to categorize NIPDEC's role as both a procurer and a distributor?
Yes.
But NIPDEC doesn't actually import anything, does it?
I can't say. I understand the procurement and the distribution
No,
aspect.
you were the chairman. Obviously, you must remember that, Dr. Richards. Surely it is a matter whether NIPDEC imports or whether it acts through agents to it buys from, it sends out tenders.
Yes, yes. I'm aware
Right,
of
so
that.
do you recall any instance where NIPDEC would actually go itself to the market to acquire pharmaceuticals? The foreign
To
market?
my knowledge, Chairman, no. It was done through companies
Yes.
and agents.
So that NIPDEC ever so often would send out tenders that it requires for the public, for provision to the public healthcare system.
Yes.
Right. Are you aware of NIPDEC applying to the ministry for special permission to import pharmaceuticals?
I'm aware of it being a process through the warehouse.
No. I'm asking you whether you are aware that there are several applications by NIPDEC. When NIPDEC applied to the ministry to be granted special permission for importation of pharmaceuticals. there are, yeah? Yeah. NIPDEC applied in 20, we have the figures here. 27 times. I can break it down for you by year if you would like me. Why would NIPDEC, if it is not an importer or direct procurer of pharmaceuticals, why would NIPDEC apply for special permission?
Respectfully, Chairman, I do not know.
But what years were you the chairman?
I was chairman from August to 2024 to end of August 2024. I can have the dates here.
All right.
August
A
27,
lot of
24
this,
to
in
May.
all fairness to you, a lot of this happened before your tenure began. But what I cannot understand is why NIPDEC is applying for special permission when NIPDEC is not an importer or direct procurer of pharmaceuticals on the international market. That is what I cannot understand. Mr. Ali, P.S. Ali, are you able to help us?
Chair, I'm not aware of what the items are, but no, I don't know why NIPDEC would apply for special permissions.
Would you agree with me that special permission is a non-transferable instrument? It means if you get it in the name of somebody, you cannot transfer it to another commercial entity. So if company X gets a special permission, it cannot transfer that special permission to company B.
Yes, Chair, I would agree.
So why is NIPDEC on 27 occasions applying for special permission to import pharmaceuticals? No one seems to know that answer. Mrs. Siboo?
Sure. The Permission of the Permanent Secretary. The Ministry of Health procures via its procurement agency, NIPDEC, as well as via the Pan American Health Organization Strategic Fund. So through the Strategic Fund, you would have medicines for HIV, for TB, for Chagas disease. Those are the orphan sort of diseases. We would also, in terms of ministry, would also procure, through the Strategic Fund, you get it at a more cost-effective method, basically. And so NIPDEC, as the procurement agency for the ministry, would be the medical supplies coordinator of NIPDEC, would be the consignee per se, who would have to import. Medicines for TB include some antibiotics, as well as some of the HIV medicines may not be registered. And the HIV medicines are not internationally available from local distributors. So they come through the PAHO, the WHO stream. Even for Hansen's disease, we have some of those that come directly from PAHO, WHO. And therefore, as NIPDEC being the procurement agency, it is my understanding, because this is what historically took place, the medical supplies coordinator as the pharmacist would be the responsible person. And in that regard, that's how the import comes in through NIPDEC. It is my understanding that is how it happened, and that's how it happens.
And that's why they would be applying for special permission continuously?
Chair, for certain medicines, because annually we procure these things from or through the strategic
Right,
fund.
so why couldn't these things be registered?
Because they come from PAHO, WHO.
I understand
listed.
all of that. So because something comes from PAHO and WHO, it means that it is, how shall we say, that it is exempt from registration?
It should not be exempt, sir, but to understand it, in order to get the documents from the international manufacturers, then you would have to apply for the documents for registration purposes and get it registered. But like I said, this is what historically took place, so I'm not too sure why that did not happen or why it never. But through the strategic fund, this is how I understand that this took place. And we try to lobby the strategic fund to get it at most cost-effective price, as well as items that are not available normally but are required, especially TB, Hansen's, malaria, those types of medicines.
So, Dr. Abdool-Richards, I want to get back to you a little bit. It's just a troubling aspect of, because I could not understand why NIPDEC has to apply, because my understanding is NIPDEC doesn't procure on the direct market. Dr. Abdool-Richards, I want to raise something with you that was raised very early in the proceedings, in these hearings. And it has to do with this troubling question of the prioritization of payments. All right?
Yes.
NIPDEC would receive the money from the Ministry of Health.
Yes.
NIPDEC would conduct its own independent assessment
Yes.
of who deserved to be paid, how much they deserved to be paid, what were the outstanding invoices.
Yes.
As far as I'm aware, NIPDEC performed an entirely independent exercise in this regard. Am I correct?
Yes.
And really, NIPDEC should have been immune from interference by ministry staff. Am I correct?
Yes.
And ministry staff should not in any way seek to influence the decision of NIPDEC as to who to pay and how much to pay.
Yes.
Right. And meetings will be regularly held between NIPDEC staff and the ministry staff.
Yes, that was the case.
Are you aware that Mr. Jabari Koja and Mr. Ramphali gave evidence before this committee that they were directed by Minister Dial Singh to make favorable payments to certain companies?
I am not aware because I was not part of any of those payment meetings.
Right. Are you aware of no, I'm not asking you if you're aware of payment meetings. I'm asking you if you're aware of the evidence.
No, I'm not aware of the evidence.
How were the payments done in NIPDEC? You were the chairman. How was the prioritization and allocation of payments done within NIPDEC internally? Well, how did they arrive at the figures?
My exposure to discussions about payments would have been at the board meetings when Jabari would have done his Mr. Cozy would have done his financial presentation. So that was my only exposure. I'll start there. I am unaware of how the prioritization was done.
All right.
Because I was not part.
Was there an administrative system in place at NIPDEC? Let us assume that you had 10 suppliers to pay. Was there a system in place as to how NIPDEC would assess and evaluate the outstanding invoices to those 10 suppliers and how we would allocate the resources we receive from Ministry of Health?
From my understanding from the board meetings, payments were to be done by I would say the age receivables. So a payment would be done to a supplier if they had an outstanding bill that was due for a longer period of time. That is my understanding that was presented at those meetings.
As chairman of NIPDEC, were you in receipt of complaints by smaller suppliers that they were not being paid on a timely basis?
Yes.
And that these smaller suppliers had very aged receivables that were not being serviced?
The complaints would have come through Mr. Kozier's office, Mr. Ramphali's office, and they would have brought it to the entire board's attention.
So having established that the principle which guided payments was the age of the receivables, what could conceivably explain the smaller companies being denied payment of their monies whilst the bigger companies were paid?
I'm unable to say because I was not part of that prioritization process.
Are you aware?
Meetings.
I understand that you perhaps don't know, but are you aware that Mr. Crozier accepted that he received an email from Mr. Asif Ali, who was permanent secretary at the time, directing Mr. Crozier and NIPDEC to increase the sums payable to certain larger importers and to leave certain smaller suppliers out?
I am not aware because I did not see that email. I do not recall seeing that email as of this.
Mr. Ali, you were here. You recall sending that email to Mr. Koja?
I recall sending an email, yes, Chair.
An email or that email in particular?
I would have sent more than one email. So
I
would have
understand
sent
that.
emails.
You would have sent thousands of emails, but do you recall sending that email? I can get it for you if you require me to, in which you said, I find the allocation to AP Scott small. Leave out, I think, I don't recall the name of the companies, but they're two smaller companies. Leave them out for now.
Chair, yes, I do, but there's context. I don't think it's fair to just speak to one email in a vacuum, if I may. So if I could just go back a bit, where you spoke about the process of payment and money is given to NIMDEC. NIMDEC normally gets money from the ministry based on our budgetary allocation. Process is that NIMDEC sends an invoice to us, a NIMDEC invoice that is supported by suppliers' invoices. NIMDEC decides which suppliers, as you rightly said, and that comes to us historically. We then apply to the Ministry of Finance for funding, get the releases, and that's then given to NIMDEC. Understanding that by the time we get the money, we already know who the suppliers are because NIMDEC would have invoiced the ministry supported by suppliers' invoices. That is a normal process that we've been following historically. What happened in approximately 22, 23 or thereabouts is that you had the amounts owed to suppliers across the board, large, medium, and small, to be very large. The funding that was given to the ministry under our budgetary allocation was not sufficient to meet all those payments. So what would have been done is that there would have been certain loans taken out, which NIMDEC would have used to also supplement our allocation to pay those suppliers. With the loan funds, those funds were accessed directly by NIMDEC. So those funds would not come to the Ministry of Health. Those were given to NIMDEC directly. They would draw down and they would pay suppliers. As you rightly said, NIMDEC would decide which suppliers they want to pay, and that's the process we would have been using.
All right, so if the decision was an independent decision of NIPDEC and NIPDEC solely, and Dr. Richards has confirmed that, why were you getting involved in directing NIPDEC how much to pay and who to leave out and who not to pay?
So I'm getting to that, Chair. What happened in about 2023 or thereabouts, as I said, is that you had certain issues happening globally. In terms of, I did mention, you have multiple suppliers not being paid. We have two sources of funding, loan funding, budgetary allocation. And then you have the whole issue into the global instability with the pharmaceutical industry. You have multiple suppliers, multiple principals, not wanting to supply drugs to the country through their agents because they're not being paid. So the ministry is facing a situation where you have bills on hand, limited funding. Which suppliers do we pay? Of course, you can use the age payable method and pay simply using that. You run the risk that at that point that you may have certain suppliers who provide critical drugs for which there are no alternatives not being able to supply. And you have a risk in terms of getting supplies within the sector, oncology drugs, for example, HIV drugs. What the ministry did at that point, and Mr. Kose would have mentioned it during the hearing, we would have said to NIPDEC, use the loan funds, which would have been more at that point in time, to pay the largest and medium suppliers, and the Ministry of Health would pay the smaller suppliers, which Mr. Jabari Kose did say that's what we did. So it's not that we said to NIPDEC, do not pay the small suppliers, leave them out. We said, use the loan funds to pay those suppliers, and the Ministry of Health would use our funds to pay the smaller suppliers. And that was what was done.
Mr. Ali, I have a very vivid recollection of that email. I can almost recall the email word for word. You said, I find the payment to AP Scott low. And then you instructed Mr. Kosher to leave out two small suppliers who NIPDEC, through the independent and fair and transparent process alluded to by Dr. Richards, had decided were deserving of payment.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Chair.
You did not tell him in that email that the ministry would pay it to them from their allocation. I understand that might be the ex post facto rationale for saying so now. But at the time,
Chair, with all due respect, I was not there during that sitting, but when I look back at the hearing, Mr. Cozier did admit that the Ministry of Health said it would pay the smaller suppliers with our funds.
that is subsequent to that email.
It may not have been in the email, but that's what we did. And
That is subsequent to the email, and that's why, when you put it in the context of what Mr. Ramphali said, that he was explicitly instructed by Minister Dialsingh to give preferential treatment to certain importers, you can understand why it is somewhat shocking. Am I not correct?
Shocking. I'm not sure what you're asking, Chair.
Wouldn't you find it shocking that a minister would instruct the CEO of NIPDEC to give preferential payment to certain suppliers?
Well, a minister should not be giving instructions to make payments to any suppliers.
And those emails, wasn't there a meeting at NIPDEC every week, Mr. Ali? On between Ministry of Health and NIPDEC, there would be a weekly meeting?
No, Chair, they were not weekly meetings. They were regular meetings with NIPDEC to discuss multiple issues. There would have been meetings to discuss the whole issue of distribution and stockouts. And there would have been meetings. There would have been at least, I think, 2 meetings, if I'm not mistaken, to deal with payments. But they were not weekly. At least I was not in any meetings on a weekly basis with NIPDEC. Let me not say there weren't meetings with NIPDEC. There may have been other meetings, but I would not have been in meetings on a weekly basis with NIPDEC.
Okay. To read something, but Mr. Hussain wishes to ask some questions.
Chair, thank you very much. I want to explore that same submission that you made, P.S. Ali. P.S., you said that the ministry will pay the small suppliers. That's what you're saying? And that NIPDEC's allocation will be used to pay the bigger suppliers?
So when I say we pay, Chair, maybe, let me be clear. We'd use our budgetary allocation to provide the funds in NIPDEC. So we don't pay the suppliers directly. If that's what I said, if I give that impression, I apologize. That's not what it is. The monies will always be given to NIPDEC to pay the suppliers. What would happen is that we'd use our budgetary allocation to meet those payments to NIPDEC.
I just want to get back to that, because the ministry, all the ministry is the client. The client is telling NIPDEC, listen, I need this, purchase this for me, I will pay you this amount of money. Why do you in the ministry have a list of the suppliers when you have retained NIPDEC as the procuring agency? Why are you examining that supplier list at the ministry level?
So, remember, we would have gotten multiple letters and had meetings with the Chamber of Commerce where they would have spoken about the issues with regard to payments to pharmaceutical companies across the board. And then, as I said, based on the issues where we are looking at possible stockouts, right, that's when we have to take a look at what are the items that we're looking at that we might be at risk of not having in the country. Look at who the suppliers are, and then try to make payments there while not ignoring the other suppliers.
No, but
and that's what, as I said, we look at it on 2 fronts, where they use the loan funds to make the larger payments, and we also use the funds that the ministry got in its allocation to make the other payments.
Yes, at the end of the day, that is not the responsibility of the ministry. The ministry has gotten an allocation to pay NIPDEC. If you receive a letter from the chamber, if you receive complaints from suppliers, wouldn't it be more prudent or proper to send that to NIPDEC and let NIPDEC make a decision on those matters, because they have the technical capacity and expertise to determine supply chain, to determine stock, and so on. All the ministry does is requisition what you need from NIPDEC. Why was the ministry getting involved in telling NIPDEC who to pay and who not to pay?
I hear you. Remember, I accept that. seeing that the Ministry of Health is ultimately responsible for the supply of pharmaceuticals and non-pharm to the country. Agreed through NIPDEC as our agent, but I do accept your point.
To show you how, Member Hussain, can I just impinge on your time for 2 minutes? To show you why this is potentially so insidious and unacceptable. There's an email thread from the 28th of February 2024 to March 26, 2024 from you, P.S. Ali, to Alexis Smith. The subject is revised tranche 3 payment schedule under 311 million loan facility, right? And that is the loan facility which NIPDEC was allowed to draw down and pay suppliers, right?
That's correct, Chair.
So what was the ministry doing directing NIPDEC to pay money under this loan if NIPDEC exercised an independent power to determine who they were going to pay?
Chair, as I said a while ago, the ministry was looking at ensuring the continued supply of certain critical drugs.
So the ministry doing that, I accept that. NIPDEC is a company run under the Companies Act. You agree with me?
I do, Chair.
The directors have a separate fiduciary duty. You agree with me?
I do.
To act in the best interests of the company. You agree with me?
So, yes, I do, Chair.
NIPDEC ought not to be taking instructions without question from the ministry. You agree with me?
I do, Chair.
NIPDEC never reported to you as PS. You agree with me?
Yes, Chair.
You had no authority to give NIPDEC instructions because they were not under your reporting line. You agree with me?
It wasn't an instruction, but I agree with you, Chair.
So the thread shows the tranche 3 payment in the amount of 100.3 million payable to the large farm and non-farm suppliers. This is what the email thread shows, and we could get it to you, that you, P.S. Ali, were asking for Massey to be bumped up to about $10 million in payment. You accept that?
Yes, Chair.
Then you said that you indicated NIPDEC can do 100 million with 25 million to be allocated as follows. Smith Rob, 9 million. Superior, 3. Vernon, 4. Massey, 2. Bryden, 3. Alston's, 2. NWT, 2. You agree with me?
I don't recall the figures, but that sounds about right.
So
Chair.
what was the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health doing, giving NIPDEC instructions when NIPDEC fell under the administrative purview of the Ministry of Finance, with the line of reporting being to the permanent secretary, Ministry of Finance? How is it tenable for the Ministry of Health to be giving instructions to NIPDEC who to pay when you told me that NIPDEC exercises an independent power?
I can't speak for NIPDEC. What I said is that it would have been the ministry's strong suggestion, agreed, based on our analysis of the supply chain and what drugs we needed. I do agree with you that NIPDEC is independent. Those would have been what I would have communicated NIPDEC. I don't recall getting any any pushback or any counter proposal from NIPDEC, or even saying, Ministry of Health, with all due respect, we hear you, but this is what we are going to pay. I don't recall getting any sort of pushback like that. I do accept your point, and as I said, I think I explained why.
P.S. Ali, I want to ask you something very frontally, and I want you to answer me in a very straightforward manner, okay? If you, I'll crave your indulgence for you to do so. Historically and culturally in this country, anyone who's familiar with public administration knows no permanent secretary does that on his own. Would you agree with me?
PS acts on advice and recommendations.
From
Yes, Chair.
whom?
Well, from technical officers.
So which technical officer you consulted before you did this?
So the principal pharmacist would have been identified by the CMO, and we spoke about it, to look at the holisty of the drug supply within the country and look at to ensuring we have an adequate supply.
So let me ask you frontally what I really want to ask you. You sent this email to NIPDEC without seeking the approval of your relevant minister at the time?
Minister would have been advised. I would have advised Minister of what I proposed to do. I didn't seek approval. Minister doesn't get involved in the payment part of it, in terms of approval, but I would have advised him.
How did you advise him?
That would have been a conversation, Chair.
So you didn't think something as important as that to put it in a document form, in an email? P.S., I'm waiting your answer.
Well, in hindsight, Chair, I guess I...
So suppose the minister tomorrow morning stood around and said, I never gave him any instructions. I knew nothing about those payments. You realize you're on your own, hung out to dry on a clothesline on a windy day. Because you had no instructions, you did this on your own, according to your evidence. You took it upon yourself to cross the lines of administrative accountability and reporting and instruct NIPDEC what to do. And you see, P.S. Ali, let me tell you why I have a problem with that. Because there are many, many emails here which speak to discussion of payment. All right? There's an email thread from 17 July 2023 to 20th July 2023 from you. All right? And you are firmly telling this committee that the minister did not get himself involved or knew or did not know anything about these payment discussions. You agree with me with that? That is what you're saying?
Chair, that's not what I said. What I said is that you asked me if I sent the email, the minister was aware. I said he was aware before I sent the email.
All right. So here's what it is. Subject deliverables for Ministry of Health. Copied to Terence Dialsing. Email threats originates from an email sent by Nigel Romano to which Terence Dialsing was copied. The email refers to the preparation of a suggested allocation for payment of $30 million to suppliers to be sent to the Ministry of Health by Wednesday, July 19th, 2023 at 12. Plainly, the minister would have known about this, okay?
About that, so if I may, Chair, about that one, yes, that would have been follow-up to a meeting held with the chairman of NIPDEC, Mr. Romano, minister, and the ministry, yes.
At 6 October 2023, there's email referencing a meeting held on Friday, 6 October 2023. Mr. Dialsing was present. And I can go through all these emails, right? But your position is that you never saw the minister, never saw the permission of the minister, you informed him.
That would have, Chair, we are speaking about the first email, that's correct. Then there have been others, as you rightly
right,
said.
so let's go to the Smith-Robb and the Massey payments, because you told me you informed the minister. When did you inform the minister? Prior to the payment prior to you sending this email or after?
Prior, Chair.
Prior. So let's get the sequence of this correct, right? So we want to nail down the chronology of it. Before you decided to send this email and reply to Jabari Kozia, okay? You went to see the minister. Did you?
That's correct, Chair.
So you walk down in the minister's office and informally and casually say, Minister, I'm going to tell NIPDEC, I'm going to use broken language, right? So because let's characterize this conversation for what it really is. Minister, here now, I'm going to instruct NIPDEC to make some payments, right? That's cool? And these are the parties. Massey, Smith-Robb, Superior, Vernon, all of them. Minister, you're cool with that, or? And the minister just say, yeah, it's a cool scene, as young people just say. Right? That's how the conversation went?
Not at all, Chair.
So what you said, I want to know what you told the minister.
Chairman, I don't remember verbatim what I told the minister, but I would have discussed with.
But you must remember, did you say minister? I propose, or let me use,
if I may.
let me use some fine PS language. Good morning, Minister. I propose to suggest to NIPDEC, the matter being a matter entirely for NIPDEC, but I propose to suggest to NIPDEC that they may want to pay so and so and so. Is that the language you used?
Chair, so the substance of it, I don't recall the language I used, but the substance of it, what I think you are asking, would have been, we have these issues in terms of the supply chain. Based on the drugs that we're talking about and the suppliers in question, this is what we want to suggest. We adjust the payments in terms of those suppliers using loan funds, and the ministry will pay the others. Right?
So wait.
So it would not have been.
So what did the minister respond and say?
He would have had no objection to.
No, hold on. So if the minister has no involvement in this, what you seeking his approval for?
I did not seek his approval.
So what you
Chair.
informing him for? For what purpose?
Because, as I said, Chair, the chamber would have written multiple times.
Forget the chamber. If the minister plays no role in this and didn't give you any instructions, why you gratuitously walk down to the minister's office and engage in a conversation like that? If the minister has nothing to do with it. And this is solely within NIPDEC's remit, and you were merely making a polite commercial suggestion.
The chamber would have written to both myself, they would have written to the minister.
We heard that already, you know.
Right. And
what I want to know is why you involving the minister, where the minister has no role in this. So it's just gratuitous information you were providing to the minister?
No, I was advising the minister based on the correspondence we have gotten from the chamber to provide, that was just feedback as to what the ministry was doing.
So if the minister told you don't do it, what would you do?
I would have had a difficulty with that because based on where we are in terms of the supply chain, we would have been at risk.
Hang on a second. So suppose the minister told you, you see that 25 million, pay to one supplier. What would you have done?
That's not how it works, Chair, and that's not what I would have done.
I didn't ask you that.
And that's not what I would have
I'm putting
done.
to you a hypothetical to show you how utterly ridiculous it is, with the greatest of respect to you and the greatest of deference to you, the story you're trying to sell me, that you went down there merely to inform the minister what you were doing and not seeking his approval. I'm sorry, I have a very real difficulty with accepting that, Mr. Ali. Everyone who sits in this room knows that is not how public administration, no PS does that on their own. You went down there merely to gratuitously inform the minister that you were going to suggest, make a polite suggestion to NIPDEC that they do the following?
Chair, that's not what I said, and that is not what I did, and that's not what I said. They would have been based on a rationale. That is what I proposed to do.
I accept that. What I want to get into is why you found it necessary to go to the minister.
And I did explain, Chair, that it would have been based on correspondence from the chamber and multiple complaints where they would have also written to the minister that I would have given feedback to the minister in terms of what we are doing.
Ms. Samarash has some questions.
The chamber were only concerned with payments to these 4 or 5 big companies?
Remember, no, the chamber would have written about payments to suppliers across the board. They would not have.
But that email talked about 4 or 5 suppliers, Chairman?
Yes, I can pass it to you.
Yeah, that
I don't know. I want to get to that.
I can pass it to you. You can see.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They were not concerned with my understanding at the last time we were there were 135 registered suppliers with the Ministry of Health. The Chamber wrote to you about these 6?
No, Chair. Sorry, remember, as I said, the Chamber wrote about payments to suppliers. It didn't mention
Right, so
6 or...
Why did you choose these 6 and not any smaller suppliers?
Remember, I'm not sure if you were here when I explained. Apologize if I repeat myself.
Maybe I wasn't here for part of the proceedings, so
Sorry, apologize.
forgive my ignorance.
The loan funds, we would have asked NIPDEC to use the loan funds to make the payments to those suppliers, and the funds under the Ministry of Health, under our budgetary allocation, would be used to pay the, as we say, the smaller suppliers. So it was not that they were not being paid. It was just we were looking at 2 different sources of funding to make the payments.
I see. And how you came up with these figures, 9, 3, 4, 2, 3, 2, 2, how was a percentage of the amount to pluck it from a hat, maybe?
No, Chair, remember, I don't recall exactly, but we'd have looked at what their payables would have been, what was owed to the suppliers, and so to make some sort of payments where they would be able to make payments to their principals.
So was it arbitrary? I'm asking arbitrary, or was a percentage across the board? 10% of the amount owed?
It wasn't arbitrary. It may have been a percentage. I don't recall offhand. Remember, I'm sorry. I don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Yes, Minister Hussain is prodding me because it's, when something irks him, it troubles him. Can't sleep at night. Which chamber?
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce. There are about 15 chambers in Trinidad.
The Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce. Sorry, ma'am.
Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. Mr. Hussain, is that satisfactory?
Lawyers' presence, consulting the people. I just have a layman's question. You outlined a very rational policy that you will take care, the NIPDEC will take care of the big amounts and the ministry will take care of the small amounts. It sounds logical to any layman. Then why do you need to go and advise the minister or inform the minister of that?
Based on the correspondence from the chamber, it was just to provide feedback. That's simply what it was.
It seems a bit superfluous there, no? The policy seems okay. To a layman, the lawyers might advise differently. Why the need for you to go against protocol as a PS? Because I'm now aware of the boundaries of a permanent secretary and so forth. Why do you need to go and advise or inform the minister thereafter? Why?
As I said, ma'am, it was just to provide feedback based on the correspondence from the chamber. That's all it was.
I don't know if you're getting me.
Maybe.
But the NIPDEC has the power, as has been stated several times by the chair. You got your policy, okay, we let NIPDEC handle the big amounts, we let the ministry handle the small amounts. Why the need then to go down to the office of the minister against protocol, admittedly so, and advise or inform him of that policy? Why the need?
I'm not sure if I'd maybe not answer any question, but it was to provide feedback to the correspondence that was written to the ministry. It was just to provide feedback on what action the ministry is taking.
But he can influence it. It's not the ministry doesn't, you said the minister doesn't get involved in payments.
Correct.
So why you need to go and advise or inform him about payments?
Because the chamber would have written to the minister and he would have asked, what are we doing about it?
Okay.
Sorry. The chamber wrote the minister, not you.
They wrote myself, they wrote the minister, they wrote NIPDEC. They would have written
when you got that letter and the minister got the letter, you all sat down and had a talk about this letter?
Not particularly know.
No, he'll talk about the letter. But you know he received the letter, and you received the letter, but you all didn't meet to talk about it.
Hang on a second, would you?
I believe we have sent a copy to me to follow.
I just asked the chairman because he's the repository of all of this information. We seem to have no letter from the chamber in any of our list of documents.
Okay.
But I just want to get back. You know the minister received a copy of the letter or the letter, and you received a copy or the letter. You know that.
That's my recollection.
And you had no conversation with him about the distribution and allocation of the funds. It didn't present a problem to him, but it presented a problem to you that you had to act on the letter.
What? It was not, no, sorry. I was not on the letter.
Well, I mean, that's the premise of what you are saying. You know, you didn't act on your own. The letter is the one which propelled you forward.
The letter was what propelled me to give feedback to the minister. Why we have to do this? Because of the supply chain, the stockouts, the possible stockouts. Not the letter. Maybe I was not clear.
But I think it's changing a little midstream there.
You just...
Minister Batiste is a little bit perplexed at this point.
You went down to the minister's office to give him unsolicited information.
Unadvised.
Let's put it in the terms.
I think Minister Batiste wants to get into the fray there, you know. Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
I mean, I think...
It's very rare that you get him into action.
Yes, Minister Batiste.
Chairman, I was listening and the lawyers and what I was all the time trying to figure out is based on a letter from the chambers that spoke to, hey, you need to look at my people to pay them. I was trying to match your response or the response to pay these 4 persons or 5 companies with the chamber's letter. So I was about to ask, how do I reconcile the two?
Yeah.
And now that you have somehow when the conversation, the further engagement, you have now dismissed the letter as being the basis for your intervention. Because all along, what was coming from you would have been this letter was the basis of your intervention in this matter of directing, as it were, NIPDEC as to who to pay. But now you have removed that from the equation. So I want to say, Chair, I am confused as to what prompted.
Well, quite frankly, because, Minister Hussain, can I just borrow that before you ask your question? Mr. Ali, were you regularly in the habit of soliciting from NIPDEC information with regard to the payment to suppliers? And naming the suppliers?
No, Chair.
So you would not call NIPDEC, you would not email NIPDEC to say what is the status of invoices to certain companies, would you?
Well, that may arise on occasion if we got a call or a complaint, as the case may be, but not on a regular, ongoing basis. That is not what would normally happen.
What I want to know is in an email thread between 14 February 2025 to February 24, 2025, you emailed, you recall somebody called Susan Balrup?
Yes, Chair, that's the Director of Finance at the Ministry of Health.
Right, and yourself and NIPDEC. And the subject was outstanding payments to suppliers, Vernon Technologies. And it says the Ministry of Health was requesting the information pertaining to the amount owed to Vernon Technologies and Superior Pharma Limited. Why would you have sent that email? Inquiring about 2 specific companies.
Chair, I don't recall. It may have been that they wrote us complaining about payments. I don't recall why I would have sent it. That may have been one reason.
All right, so we see a pattern developing, right? Vernon Technology Superior Pharma wrote to you, you wrote an email. The Chamber of Commerce wrote to you about certain companies, you wrote an email. What about Quelco and Summit, who NIPDEC said deserve money and you told them don't pay them? October 6, 2023 to October 10, 2023, there's an email which shows that you indicated on 9th October that the payment for AP Scott was low and suggested reducing Quelco and Summit Cosmetics to redirect to AP Scott. The thread further indicates that the adjustment was made and AP Scott got an additional 1.2 million with no money to Quelco and Summit. So on the one hand, you're sending email giving the minister unsolicited gratuitous advice on payment for certain companies, but other companies, as we say in Trinidad, crapo smoke their pipe. Minister Hussain?
Sure, go ahead.
Well, Quelco and Summit were not members of the Chamber of Commerce?
I'm not sure who are members of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm sorry.
No, well, the Chamber of Commerce wrote you and tell you to pay these 6. You pay the 6, according to you.
No, that's not what I remember. That's not what I said. I never said the Chamber wrote to pay 6. I said the Chamber wrote about payments to suppliers. What I also said.
So Quelco and Summit are suppliers, right?
Yeah, agreed. What I also said is that the emails to NIPDEC about which suppliers to pay was not based on the letter from the Chamber. It would have been based on looking at the suppliers, the stock, the items that we may be in danger of running out of because of the supply chain. That's the reason, not because of the Chamber writing or anybody writing to the ministry about payments. That's not the reason we would have looked at which suppliers to recommend the NIPDEC to pay.
I didn't get the answer to the learned chairman when he said the rest of the suppliers crapo smoke your pipe. What was the answer to that?
That the ministry would have paid suppliers using our budgetary allocation, provided money to NIPDEC to make the payments using our budgetary allocation. Now, let me just say, members, that looking at the loan funds, looking at the budgetary allocation, even in total, at that point in time, it was less than the amounts owed to suppliers across the board. All right? So there was no way that NIPDEC or the ministry was going to be able to pay all the suppliers. We were looking at different approaches to make payments to everybody to at least ensure, one, that suppliers are paid for goods that they delivered, but that also we're able to continue providing a supply of drugs to the country. We try to balance those two factors.
Batiste?
Mr. Ali, just, I really want you just to help me. I am trying to create a linkage between what you would have said and what you're saying now. What you would have said is that the reason for engaging the minister in this whole thing is premised upon a letter from the Chamber of Commerce. And what you were sharing with the minister is the selection of stated suppliers for payment. I'm trying to create the nexus. If all the minister received was a general letter of concern for payment of members of the chambers, how come that prompted you to tell the minister about these specific 6 suppliers that are being paid, which you are now saying has nothing to do with the chamber's letters?
So maybe I could see if I could help. That was just basically letting the minister know what we are doing in response. It may not have been what the chamber wanted to hear or to satisfy the chamber's request, but that's basically what the ministry would have been, the action we were taking at that time.
The action that you were taking in response of the chamber's letters?
No, it was action we were taking with regard to payment to suppliers. So you have a letter saying people are not being paid. And we're saying these are the payments, Minister, that we are going to be making at this point in time. That's all it is. It's not in response to any specific letter.
Mr. Ali, you are making an intervention, because it would appear to me that the minister could have contacted NIBDEC and find out about payments. But something prompts you to make an intervention. What you've shared with us is a particular letter that was copied to the minister is what prompted you to want to speak to him and share with him your intervention. And what was your intervention? The intervention was to pay seven specific companies. And there's a kind of missing information that ties this letter, the minister's awareness of the chamber's request, and your particular response, that intervention to pay the six. Why would that have been of interest to the minister, that you're going to be paying these seven suppliers?
How do I? It was not that we were paying only those six, it was the payments we were proposing that NIBDEC makes and the action we were taking.
You were making a polite suggestion to NIBDEC? Is that what it was?
No, I wouldn't say it was a polite suggestion.
So what was it?
It was a strong
suggestion.
A strong suggestion based on the factors I laid out earlier, Chair.
One with which NIBDEC subsequently and pliantly complied with.
Well, one with which NIBDEC apparently complied because they proceeded to make the payments.
Is there any instance where you suggested to NIBDEC a payment which NIBDEC didn't subsequently make? Or which NIBDEC told you no?
Not that I recall.
Walks like a duck, looks like a duck, quacks like a duck. Most likely it's a duck, you know, PS. Minister Hussain?
Chairman, I want to go back to this Chamber of Commerce letter. It's troubling me. Chairman, there's 7 suppliers that PS Ali would have asked to be paid. And I just happened to look at the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce website, and they have a membership list. And under the membership list, there's a category called Pharmaceuticals. And I cross-referenced the Chamber's list with the 7 suppliers here. And of the 7, 4 of those suppliers do not belong to the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce, and payments were asked for them. PS, can you give an explanation for that? Did you check the suppliers against who the Chamber was advocating? Because I'm sure the letter may have given some detail as to the suppliers.
So, to answer your question, remember, no, we did not check the suppliers on the letter to decide who to pay. What we looked at were the type of drugs that we were going to be possibly in short supply of, and whether the items were in stock, whether they were coming in, what was the, were there alternative suppliers for some of those drugs, and those are the factors we use to look at payments, not whether somebody is a member of the chamber or not.
Let me ask something. When these companies or these suppliers were contracted, the contract was entered between NIBDEC and the supplier, not the Ministry of Health.
That's correct, member.
But the Chamber decided to write the Ministry of Health.
And I believe they also wrote NIBDEC. I can't
NIBDEC, did the Chamber have... Your mic. Are you
Minister,
aware?
I am not aware of a letter as a director and chairman.
And just be clear, a letter from the Trinidad and Tobago
I am
Commerce.
not aware of one.
So you're not aware of that at all?
I am not aware of it.
And when those payments would have come to NIBDEC and so on for these suppliers, did you ask Mr. Cozier why he chose these suppliers?
We did not, at the board level, we would only get the financial deck
Afterwards?
presentation. But it would not be broken down in that detail. It would just say X million to farmer or to projects, etc. It was not in that level of granularity to us.
Sure.
So, Dr. Abdool-Richards, can I just ask you this? In your experience as chairman of NIPDEC, did you get any official complaint from the ministry, either through the minister or the permanent secretary acting on behalf of the minister as the accounting officer, that NIPDEC was somehow being slow or recalcitrant in its payments to suppliers?
No, I do not have any official complaint or documentation with regards to payments.
Were the officers of NIPDEC authorized by the board of NIPDEC to deal directly with the ministry insofar as payments are concerned?
I cannot see.
Did the officers of NIPDEC report to you or to the board of NIPDEC in any way whatsoever that they were liaising with the ministry directly as to payment?
The GM of NIPDEC would present at the board meeting. That was the reporting relationship. But he did not go into the granularity of meetings. We would just get an overview of what was going on.
Don't you find it somewhat disconcerting that NIPDEC as a board, with our line ministers, the Ministry of Finance, would also be taking instructions from the accounting officer in the Ministry of Health?
I was not aware of that sort of close relationship because, as I indicated, I was not part of any payment meetings.
So you, as chairman of NIPDEC, would never have seen any correspondence emanating from Ministry of Health to NIPDEC inquiring about payment?
I cannot recall at this point in time.
P.S. Ali, I'll tell you what my difficulty with this exchange and the introduction of the requests of the Chamber of Commerce and all of that. It's just that it seems to be somewhat inequitable. That companies who have the umbrella protection of the Chamber of Commerce are being treated differently from companies which don't fall under the umbrella protection of the Chamber of Commerce. And that's the difficulty I have with that. Speaking for myself, of course. And I find it somewhat incredulous that small suppliers could be left out, because cash flow management is an integral part of small business, perhaps more so than these large companies which have group money available to them. Small businesses could be squeezed out of the marketplace by being denied cash flow. And that's the trouble I have with this. So, and it doesn't seem as though your email exchanges with NIPDEC shows any sensitivity from the ministry's level to the problems of small and medium-sized enterprises insofar as the maintenance of their cash flow requirements are concerned. It seems to me, speaking for myself, of course, that the ministry concentrated on the large players only, because I'm not seeing any email, and we've scoured the email provided to us, where one single request was made on behalf of small companies who need their money perhaps more so than these large companies. And I just find it incredulous that nothing like that has happened. Minister Hussain?
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I want to get to some other matters with respect to inspections and so on of suppliers. Ms. Siboo, I want to ask whether or not you are aware whether or not audits would have been done to the premises of suppliers.
Minister, from time to time, once there is a, there is a need for us to go in. When I say us, Drug Inspectorate would be with respect to antibiotics and narcotics. So if there's a need for them to move, let's just say from one location to another location, these are the suppliers, they would write to us and we would do an inspection. But in order to move, you would have to do an audit of their records in terms of supplies, the products.
Have you ever done an audit without a company deciding to move?
We would have, in terms of location, so they would have, not physical location move, so they would have moved the storage of the antibiotics and narcotics from one area of their warehouse to, let's say, another area of the warehouse. Okay. In some instances also, based on the fact that we would have sales reports and distribution reports on a monthly basis. Upon review, we would see from time to time if there are any, red flags or whatever. We will go in and check their records to make sure that it's... So we would do inspections per se and look at the records, yes.
So can I ask whether or not, other than the antibiotics and so on, and the control drugs or the narcotics, whether or not you would have inspected their trade and non-trade items also?
Respectfully, Minister, antibiotics and narcotics will fall under the unit that I am head of, Chemistry, Food and Drug Director. If that's okay, he could probably be able to answer in that regard.
Was inspections conducted? Who are you directing the question to?
Mr. Hyder Ali, sorry. Yes.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes.
For control items entering the country, we want to keep a check of it, so we do inspections at the point of entry to verify that the invoice and the amount imported are matching.
Now, to ask whether or not you all were going in the premises of some of the suppliers and checking their trade and non-trade items.
Only if there's a recall for the product or there's an issue with a particular product, then we go in to do an inspection.
And do you have a list of these persons you would have gone to?
I can check the records.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I ask for a list of all of the suppliers that both principal pharmacists and also food and drug would have gone to for an inspection of their premises?
We could write in the future for that.
Yes, thank you very much. And I just want to ask a frank question. Ms. Siboo, did you ever meet with suppliers?
When you go in to do the inspection,
so you go and do the inspection yourself?
In some instances, based on the staffing that we have, or the unavailability of staffing and the need to do it, I would go in some instances and meet with the pharmacist, the responsible pharmacist, to whom the license is given. There would have been a stakeholder meeting during the pandemic, and when I say stakeholder, it would have been NIPDEC coordinating that meeting together with the Ministry of Health and suppliers to identify what would have been some of the challenges with respect to the supply chain that would have happened as a result or may have happened as a result of the pandemic.
Sure. P.S. Ali, other than that meeting, have you ever met with suppliers?
So, I don't... Which meeting is that, member? Sorry.
No, have you ever met with any of the drug suppliers, the pharmaceutical suppliers? The NIPDEC?
With NIPDEC? No, I think the only meeting I would have met with suppliers would have been a meeting at the chamber, if I'm not mistaken, where there would have been suppliers. I think that's the only meeting.
So you had a meeting at the chamber, and then they wrote you?
Oh, no, this was something... That meeting was not about payment, member. It was for something else. We met with the...
Sure. And
yeah.
Dr. Abdool-Richards, have you ever met with pharmaceutical suppliers?
Yes, socially, I know. Sorry. Yes, socially, I would have met persons in a very social setting.
In a social setting?
Yes.
What does that mean?
What I would have seen them at an event or in a certain space, the gym, where...
And you would have been aware who these suppliers were and which companies that they...
Intermittently, yes. I try to avoid them because the question always comes about payment, which I have had no control over.
Okay.
Chairman, I have one final question for PS. It falls in the line of questioning of Member Batiste. When you went against protocol, apparently, to the minister to advise and inform him, and give him these 7 suppliers and told him all of this, what was his answer to you? What was the minister's answer to you?
He had no objection to the recommendation. Not going to pay, because we're not paying, but I mean, yeah, he had no objection.
Okay, but you said this is big because it falls in the line of question of Member Batiste. You went to him against protocol. Okay, policy seems appropriate. You said to him and said, this is what you want to do. You want to pay the $7. What was his answer to you? What did he say to you? He had no objections. He said to you, okay, proceed to pay.
Basically, I mean, in essence, I don't remember the words verbatim, member, but basically, yes.
But the minister should have nothing to do with payment, right?
Agreed.
So why would the minister then say, go ahead and pay?
No, he didn't say go ahead and pay. That's what I said, not the words verbatim, but I would have informed the minister what we're doing, and he would have had no objection.
Some semantics, remember. Semantics.
Remember, with all due respect, you have to remember words. I don't remember the specific words that were used. I'm sorry.
But you do remember going to see the minister to inform him that you were paying this $25 million. So you don't remember the words. You don't remember the circumstances. The only thing you remember at that meeting is you went to see the minister to inform him.
Advice.
No, he didn't say advice, to inform the minister. I want to use a neutral word. That's the only thing you remember about that meeting, P.S. Ali.
Also the circumstances, remember, not the words, but the circumstances, because that is what would have led to the advising the minister.
Okay, thank you. I think Minister Mara.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah, just through you, Chairman, to the PS. Oh, sorry, do you want to go first?
You said something, Apasa, a short while ago. You said when you met at the chamber with the suppliers. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, there would have been a meeting at the chamber with the suppliers. I don't recall what the meeting was about at this point in time right now.
Yeah, what would have prompted a meeting for you to meet with, that is the chamber suppliers, the suppliers that Mr. Hussein identified a short while ago when he read from his deep research?
Yeah, it would not have been myself only. I honestly don't remember what the meeting would have been for, member. I think...
You're a PS. I mean, you ain't going to any and every meeting because you're all very careful.
Agreed. It would have been for some initiative. I just honestly don't recall what it was.
Specifically with the pharmaceutical suppliers?
It would have been with the pharmaceutical, what they call section of the chamber.
Right, and yeah. Mr. Hussein identified maybe 10 or 12 of them?
It wasn't to do with payments. I'm sorry, I don't recall what the meeting was for, but there would have been one meeting.
Would you recall whether that meeting took place before the letter from them or after the letter from them? I know it might be some time ago, it might be difficult, but I'm just trying to place the two together.
I remember.
Okay. And you don't recall what the nature of that meeting was for?
If you give me some time, I would, but right now I don't. But I do know that we would have met. The minister would have met with the chamber.
If your memory is jolted, please assist us.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Chair,
sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I will, just a quick observation and a question. Firstly, I find this ministry, at least from my point of view, operates in a very mysterious fashion. The minister makes decisions with advice from the DAC. Then we have the minister gets a letter, as the PS also. And then the PS goes to the minister to advise what is being done. Normally, one would assume that the minister would give some direction. Is that a normal operation in the Ministry of Health, that whilst the minister may get a letter and the minister says nothing, and the PS on his own initiative goes on and makes decisions and suggestions? Is that a normal operation there? Because if it is, I would find it very curious. Eh?
No, it's not, member. Once the minister receives correspondence, depending on what it is, it will be passed on to the relevant officer, whether it's the PS, the CMO, what have you. At that point, you normally provide feedback on the substantive issue.
So what you're saying, the minister received the letter, sent it to you, and he would send the letter, he would require some sort of feedback. So the minister did require feedback, did ask for feedback. Is that what you're saying now?
That's what I said earlier, member.
Just to bring some more clarity, Chair, if you'd allow me. Dr. Richards, can you just tell us who are some of the suppliers you may have met with socially?
I would have, let me go through. I would have known persons just generally from different companies, possibly Bride and Pie, not possibly Bride and Pie because of where I live, and I would see them at Adams, and they would ask a question, and I would say, I have to refer that, back to NIBDEC. I don't get involved in this. I'm just calling your name. So
what type of question they would ask you that you will tell them to go to?
No, well, they would say, when we get them paid, the usual question, that sort of thing.
So they encountered you at these?
Well, I'll be shopping in Adams on a Saturday, and that is where the questions would come. So when I said socially, that's what I meant.
And I think Bride and Pie was on the PS list? Yes. Yeah, I think Bride and Pie was on the PS list.
But I would have no idea of how much they would owe. It would be just a, question because they saw a face associated with the company.
Any other supplier other than Bride and Pie you would have met with?
Met with in terms of socially?
Yes.
I knew someone through the NGO circuit who I would see intermittently, as in once a year possibly, from Aventa.
Aventa also.
Mm-hmm.
I think Aventa is also one of those companies
it is.
that receive big payments.
It is, but they never asked me anything about payments. That was strictly on an NGO level.
So Bride and Pies would have inquired, but Aventa
Well,
didn't.
it's a random question in the cash register at Adams or West Mall. Somebody sees you in a line,
Sure.
not a call to look to come.
And any other companies?
I think those would have been the two that I would have
Sure.
seen. I don't know the others.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, just a round off. When you gave us the answer about meeting the suppliers at the chamber, you looked to your right in support of somebody as if to indicate that that person may have known or accompanied you to that meeting, but nobody seemed to have responded favorably to you. I mean, could you tell me which person you were looking at who may have known about it?
To Ms. Siboo, I'm not sure Ms. Siboo would have been at the meeting.
Ms. Siboo?
Yeah, I'm not
but
sure.
She kept a very straight face when you were looking at her. Ms. Siboo, can you assist?
I remember, Minister, that there was a meeting, a stakeholder meeting again with the chamber. I am not too sure of the objective, but I clearly remember that there was a meeting
at the chambers.
At the chambers conference room. Yes, but there was
in West Moorings.
Yes, in West Moorings, sir. And it was a stakeholder, so it was not ministry alone. I think that was there, but I vaguely remember it. But we can probably provide information.
Okay, just thought perhaps.
Yes, we can provide, but it was a stakeholder, so it was not ministry and chamber alone. I clearly remember that part of it, because chemistry.
When PS was looking in your direction, I noticed you didn't look back, so I thought
In my respectful view, there's a curious confluence of circumstances here. The companies that were selected for payment, special selection for inquiries, right? Smith Robertson, Massey, Superior, Vernon, Bryden, all of them. When you look at the application for special import permit, special permission, these companies dominate that list too. So on the one hand, they were getting preferential treatment for payment, and on the next hand, they were getting preferential treatment for special permission. You see why I describe it as a curious confluence of circumstances? Yes? And why it is troubling that out of all the 135 suppliers, there are only emails for about 8 of them, 9 as a matter of fact. Not even 9, 7, quite frankly, because Superior and Vernon are included. What I want to know is what made these companies so special that they were deserving of special attention of the highest echelons of the ministry staff. That is the troubling matter for me. whilst the small and medium-sized enterprises were left essentially to fend for themselves in managing their cash flow. Don't you find that somewhat alarming and disturbing, PS?
Chair, I can't speak to special permission part of it. Let me just say again, and I acknowledge your point that it's not in the email. I say again, and Mr. Cozier confirmed that the ministry would have said we would pay, well, we would fund the smaller suppliers from our allocation to NIPDEC, which we did. So they were not part of that email that I sent. I agree, and I admit that's not a dispute. But it's not that they were not considered. The ministry is very aware of the need to make sure that all the suppliers are paid, all right, because they provided a service, a product to the ministry, and they need to be paid, and we would have done that. All right. I take your point, and I agree. It's not the email that you have. That's not there. I'm not disputing that.
So you see, when we look at this pharmaceutical industry, right, we have clear and unequivocal evidence from a very senior officer that every application, and we come back and we're going to finish off just now because I recognize there are public servants that need to get home, that every application has a recommender. Somebody recommends it because of technical evaluation and scientific evaluation. But yet we have columns and columns of special applications, and it's just too much to go in which there is no evidence that there was a recommendation that the permission be granted. P.S. Fortune?
Yes, Chair, that is correct.
And then for 369 of these special permissions, of 918 so far, 1/3, a little over 1/3, no information has been obtained.
Yes, Chair, we searched the records and couldn't get any information regarding whether
So
or not there was
on what basis were these public servants exercising that power they thought they had? That is what is troubling. And as we end, I want to end by saying, yes.
I run the risk of being there may be some redundancy because you may have addressed it, but I just want for clarity.
Yes, Minister.
I have this written signed statement from Dr. Parashram, which stated, I acted on the advice of the Director of CFDD, Chemistry, Food and Drug Division, and or the principal pharmacist. And hear what he says. He acted in all instances on the advice of the Director of CFDD and or principal pharmacist. To both the principal pharmacist and the CFDD. Is this true or false? This is what was stated in writing and signed by the CMO. So I would just put for the record. He signed the statement. He acted on your advice in all instances. Not in some, in all instances. It is in his written statement. Is that true or false?
Remember, I wasn't the one who gave the recommendations, but normally, yes, the items as under the Food and Drugs purview, the Director of Food and Drugs would have recommend or not recommend the product for special permission.
So how we are able to find them in some instances and we're not able to find them in other instances? We're finding those from 2016, 2017, 2018. Because I'll tell you what the trends show. The recommendations are consistent, they're sometimes sporadic, between 2016 to 2017. But for some reason in 2018, there seems to be no information from this table. That is the year in which the lack of information is particularly bad. What could possibly account for that? Mrs. Siboo, your name appears here as having been approving some, and I understand that, okay? But what is alarming, shocking, and disconcerting is that in many, many instances, the vast majority of instances, no information. There are no recommenders, and there's no information. And then when you tie all that together with what appears to be the bypassing of the scientific and technical guardrail established by the statute, and you have drugs being approved, and some of them who are not registered, which are not registered, continue to be imported into this country without any scientific and technical guardrail, or which is the registration process. I'm sure you all will agree with us that this is untenable. To sum it up, as we end, thank you all very much, but I can do no better than recall the words of Marcellus in Hamlet. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. Thank you all very much. This meeting now stands adjourned. We will adjourn to a date to be fixed. Thank you all very much. May I express the gratitude of myself and the committee for the public servants. Thank you all very much.